syndrome is that it contains two diseases. And the two diseases are either double right-sidedness or double left-sidedness. And I'll show you what the differences are. And to call something heterotaxy tells you nothing about it. The other thing about it is when you start to make the diagnosis of heterotaxy, if you start to look at what they have as diseases, they have different diseases in the two forms of heterotaxy, and that will become evident. So once you start to get a pointer as to one or the other, you can get them, and they've got different prognosis. That's the problem. The prognosis in these babies is completely different, okay? So let's evaluate the features of isomerism and the new associations, okay? Now here is a sea mollusk. It's a kind of a snail that lives in the sea. They've been with us for 60 million years, okay? And what we've done is we started to knock out them. So normally you see the spiral is going this way in a, let's call it a counterclockwise, clockwise direction, okay? And here's where the entrance of the mollusk is. Now if you take this and you knock out a gene, I won't tell you which gene yet. If you knock out one of them, then you get this going exactly in the opposite direction, okay? So even the snail can have situs solitus and situs inversus, okay? All right. So this is the paper published in Nature in 2009 that looked at that. And even by the stage of the blastomer, when you get to the 6 or the 12 cell stages, you can see that there are differences that are expressed related to these various genes. And here's a paper by my friend Dr. Bruno Marino from Rome, who tried to say that maybe transposition was on this basis. It's a nice idea, but I don't think it moves. But so you knock it out, you get this, but if you knock out both genes, then you get a picture like this. So what is this gene? It's the gene called nodal. Nodal, here we go. Nodal and brachyuria and pitex are all genes that give rise to the origins of situs. So what we know is that it is a genetic disease, although it's sporadic. 10% of patients with heterotaxy syndrome have one relative with congenital heart disease. And they can be either autosomal dominant or recessive or X-linked. The familial causes 25% chances of transmitting the condition in every pregnancy, and X-linked in only the male offspring has a 50% chance. Now the problem with all of this stuff is there are very few people that have actually looked at the real phenotype, because the phenotype is not heterotaxy. The phenotype is either left isomerism or right isomerism. So when you go in the literature, what you get is confusion. And that's my point. Now we know about this condition. It used to be called Cartagena syndrome, which is situs inversus with cyanobronchitis, okay? And this condition is a condition where the cilia of the respiratory system are abnormal. So they get deafness, they get cyanobronchitis, and they get bronchiectasis, and their heart's on the wrong side. And when you do an ECG on them, the progression is exactly the opposite to what you'd expect, and the P-wave vector is the opposite to normal. Well, it's not exactly true, but that's what the syndrome is described as. So here is a nasal biopsy from a normal person. Okay, and you see the cilia are beating beautifully. Can you see them? They're beating. Well, I can see it. So if I can see it, you can see it. There, on that one. Now I'm going to show you the cilia beating on this example. They are actually moving. Can you see them moving? See, these one or two of them moving here. That's what happens. Now we know that cilia are important in moving cells in the embryo. So if you don't have cilia moving the cells get confused. And when cells get confused, They develop differently, and that really is the fundamental of this condition. Now, this is just a reminder of the genes associated with protagonist syndrome. There's a huge number of genes already involved in looking at this. The other thing about contagonist syndrome is that it's not just situs inversus. They can have congenitally corrected transposition. They can have mesocardia. They can have all kinds of things. So this is a disease that develops because the cilia in the embryo, not only in the respiratory tract, are not well developed and they don't come right. This is an example of a series of hearts. The first one on the outside are fetal mice. These fetal mice come from a laboratory in St. George's, and where the doctor is involved in the system, and he looked for a gene, and he found the gene PITX2 is involved, and it's the IV mouse. IV stands for inversus, and if you have two genes for IV, you develop situs solitus. If you knock one of them out, you get situs inversus, and if you knock both of them out, you get either left isomerism or right isomerism. So that's very interesting. So even this is an embryo, a mouse embryo, and even in about halfway through mouse gestation, you can see this is a right atrial appendage, and this is a left atrial appendage. It's narrow-based with fine trabeculations and a crenellated lower border. The left one has got coarse trabeculations that come out of the appendage and surround the vestibule of the valve, and they've got different shapes. The right atrium looks like Snoopy's ear, and the left atrium looks like Snoopy's nose. That may not be good for you, so this is narrow attachment, and this is broad triangulated attachment. And we can see that on MRI. Okay. So basically, if you want to get involved in this, we can say that there are 4 different entities. There are actually 5. I'll tell you about the 5th one in a minute. The one is situs solitus. Okay? Solitus means usual. Situs means arrangement. So the usual arrangement is a left atrial appendage on the left and a right atrial appendage on the right. You've got a right bronchus with a short lobe and an upper lobe and three lobes to the right lung. The left bronchus doesn't have an upper lobe. It has a long bronchus with only 2 lobes. The liver, of course, is on the right side with the gallbladder on the right. The stomach is on the left, and the spleen develops in the luino-renal ligament, okay? And it develops on the left side, on the outside of the lesser sac, okay? Now, mirror image is nothing other than an absolute inversion of this. Sometimes people call this situs inversus. I call it mirror imagery. Eh? Now, the other 2 terms that we've got are left isomerism and right isomerism. Okay? In left isomerism, aren't you buying the chapter? It'll be in the chapter. You don't have to take photographs, but you can go ahead. So, in right isomerism, they have got 2 right bronchi, and that's pretty common. And we can recognize right bronchi with a simple technique like bronchial tomography. And you can do it in a neonate, so it's easy to develop, okay? They frequently have 2 right lungs with trilobes, okay? They have a liver, they have generally no spleen. Not always, but generally no spleen. They may even have multiple spleens, and that's the reason I don't like the term polysplenia, because that describes the disease by the spleens when the disease is primarily a thoracic abnormality. So we have got 2 right atrial appendages there, and we can recognize right atrial appendages. I'm going to show you that. And the other one has 2 left bronchi, which can be recognized on bronchial tomography, 2 left lungs with no minor fissure on either side. They have a liver and they have a spleen that develops on both sides of the lesser sac of the stomach, one on the outside, or some on the outside and some on the inside. And we call that condition left isomerism. I think it's easy to think of them as double left-sided disease and double right-sided disease. Okay? So what do the atrial appendages really look like? Here are two left atrial appendages. First of all, let's stop and show you that there's a common AV canal, and there was a common AV canal here. Okay? Okay. This is small atrial appendages with not marked pectinate muscles in it. Here, you see well-marked pectinate muscles. You see bilateral terminal crests here. Here's one, there's another one. You see the pectinate muscles are coarse and come out of the vestibule, out of the appendage and surround the vestibule of the AV valve on both sides. Even though this is receiving the IVC and the hepatic veins, the appendages are typical on both sides of double right atrial appendages. Okay? This is just a little confusing patient here. This is a patient with left isomerism, spongy myocardium, double outlet right ventricle, complete heart block, complete AV canal, and juxtaposition of the left atrial appendage on the right side. So he's got two left atrial appendages on the right side of his body. And of course, we have his autopsy, and he died. So here are examples of left isomerism and right isomerism. Short bronchi and total veins below the diaphragm, a common feature of right isomerism. So this is right, double right-sidedness, and this is double left-sidedness. And you see the pulmonary veins are draining on both sides of the atrial septum because this is a much more liberal condition. All right. So here is an example of polysplenia, which, you know, is a common feature, but it's not multiple spleens because it occurs on both sides of the dorsal mesogastrium. And this is the other thing that's important about this from the pediatrician's point of view, is not only the pediatrician, but also even into adult life, is that the bowel, as you know, herniates out of the abdomen at the 6th week, and it develops outside the abdomen, and then it comes back in an orderly pattern, which puts the appendix in the right iliac fossa, this sigmoid in the left iliac fossa, the jejunum in the left upper part, and the jejun and the ileum in the left lower part, in the right lower part. So it's very ordered. If you look at this, there's no order at all to it. This is a patient with heterotaxy. The heart and the body parts are on the opposite side of the spine. Look, there are two right lobes. There are two right lobes here. There's also a gallbladder on the left side. What's going on? The gallbladder belongs on the right. Okay? And the bowel is totally malrotated. And these patients can die from their bowel malrotation because they can get volvulus, and before you know it, you've got a patient who's immunologically compromised because they don't have spleens, generally speaking, and they can die. So that's what. If you turn this around after fixation, you can see the stomach is not on the left or the right, but it's in the middle. It can't decide where it's going. Okay? And there are definitely 3 lobes on either side of the body here. Okay? So there are a number of extracardiac anomalies. Okay? 52% with polysplenia had a midline defect, and 45% of the right. So 45% of them have got midline defects, right? And in fact, I just saw a woman the other day, a 16-year-old woman with primary amenorrhea but perfectly normal sexual characteristics, and the scan of her abdomen showed she had an absent uterus. So the disease is not only confined to the heart, but it goes over a lot of organs, okay? So this is, I got from somebody else. It says intestinal malrotation, 100%. Partial thoracic stomach, 25%. Biliary abnormality in left isomerism is 20 to 25%. So they have, when they have no gallbladder, they don't have a bile duct, so they develop jaundice. Okay, and they also get duodenal atresia and genitourinary anomalies in almost a fifth of them. So I've developed this little law, which I keep for myself, based on my own experience, about how you look at left isomerism and right isomerism. You start looking at the systemic veins, bilateral superior vena cavas in both, but in the one, one goes to a coronary sinus with a coronary sinus septal defect, and a coronary sinus has never been seen in right isomerism. The IVC is interrupted in 80%, 4 out of 5 people with left isomerism have an interrupted inferior vena cava with an azygos, just as I showed you in the last lecture. In 95%, juxtaposition of the aorta and the IVC on the same side of the spine occurs. The pulmonary veins may be normal or partial. They are most frequently totally anomalous and either supradiaphragmatic or infradiaphragmatic or draining to an azygos vein. The atrial septum, this is where you're not helped. AV septal defects may occur in left isomerism, may not have an atrial septal defect. In right isomerism, they invariably have a common AV canal with an AV septal defect. Okay? The ventricles, you may get nothing in left isomerism. Okay? Or you may get an AV septal defect or a single ventricle. In right isomerism, it's invariably a large ventricular component of an atrioventricular canal. The myocardium is spongy in left isomerism, but not in right. The ventricular arteriole is frequently normal in left isomerism, but it may be double outlet right ventricle. In right isomerism, it's almost always transposition or double outlet with pulmonary stenosis or pulmonary atresia. The obstructions to the great arteries and from the left AV valve onward are left-sided, mitral, aortic, and coarctation. On the right side, pulmonary atresia, pulmonary stenosis. The ECG, if you have 2 left atriums, you don't have a sinus node. If you don't have a sinus node, you can't have a normal P wave vector. So you do an ECG, and the P waves of a left isomerism are upright in the upper leads, indicating that the pacemaker is ejecting in an upward direction. And there may be 2, because you've got 2 right atriums, you may have 2 right sinoatrial nodes, but usually one overrides the other. Chest X-ray, you see the 2 left bronchi and the 2 left lobations, and of course with CT scanning as well. And on the right you see 2 right bronchi and 3 lobations. Gut malrotations, extrahepatic biliary atresia and left isomerism. And in asplenia, there's no spleen generally speaking, although that's not the case. So I think that they may be considered as the liberal for left isomerism, anything goes. The right are very conservative. They do things by the book. In America, we call them Democrats and Republicans. We call them leftists and rightists. And the number of cases of right isomerism that don't have a univentricular atrioventricular connection, an AV canal defect, obstructed totally anomalous pulmonary venous return, pulmonary atresia and transposition can be counted on the fingers of a mutilated hand, which means if your hand's mutilated, you don't have fingers. So you can count them. My colleague Julius Hoffman said that. So we can start our investigation on these patients by looking at the abdomen and seeing where they are. See where the stomach is, where the spine is, where the inferior cava is, where the descending aorta, where the spine is, and in mirror imagery, they're inverted. In left isomerism, the azygos vein lies behind the aorta in most of the cases. In right isomerism, there's juxtaposition, usually on the same side of the spine. Okay, so here's an example of visceral situs, okay, normal, okay, IVC and descending aorta. So what I like to do is I like to take and make a checklist. But it would be unfair of me to say that everything that looks like isomerism is going to look like this, because this is a paper by a very famous guy called Jeff Tobin from, you would say, at Houston at the time, in this ZIC3, which is a sex-linked inheritance of things, and he looked at the classical heterotaxy with these conditions, and he found, in fact, that levocardia was very much less common in the asplenia than the polysplenia. Let's just replace this with right isomerism and left isomerism. that dextrocardia was much more common with right isomerism. Hyperplastic left heart, which is interesting, always occurs with the right isomerism. Pulmonary stenosis in 50%, complete AV canal in 68 compared to 44%. Pulmonary stenosis did occur in 33% of these patients. Double outlet right ventricle, nothing, a wash both ways. Detransposition, much more common in right isomerism. L-transposition, none in either of those. Total anomalous pulmonary venous return, a third, only 1 or 11% of those. Partial anomalous pulmonary venous return, I'm surprised that it's got these numbers, but that's the point about this. Superior vena cava abnormalities in 50%, more common here. RVC abnormalities, including interruption, 78% as opposed to 32%. So really, they may look like they segregate perfectly in a textbook, but they don't do that when you look at them in terms of looking at a real population. Okay. Now, we looked at this in the fetus in our practice, and what we found is that this is all the patients admitted to the Northern California section of our hospitals, to intensive care units, who had serious congenital heart disease. And the mothers were asked one question: did you have a fetal cardiac ultrasound? So we wanted to see how good are obstetricians at picking up this lesion. Okay? And if they said yes, we can look at their records, we went and looked at their records. And the top thing that they were able to find was heterotaxy. The reason why they could find heterotaxy was because it's very easy to see that the stomach and the heart are on different sides of the spine. If the stomach and the heart are on the same side of the spine, you probably don't have heterotaxy, okay? So that's why they got 63% right. Total veins, which is another normal feature of right isomerism, as we showed you, they got 0 right. They weren't able to recognize it, which is really remarkable because it's very easy to recognize it. Just let's look at transposition. Transposition, their total, 17%. Hyperplastic left heart, you see they can count up to 4. They go 1, 2, 3, they realize there's a chamber missing, so they were pretty good on hyperplastic left heart and hyperplastic right heart. But they are pretty abysmal statistics. So what we do with the segmental stenosis is determine fetal position, determine the visceral situs, the cardiac position, look at the chambers, look at the AV connection, look at the ventricular correction, and describe the concomitant anomalies. So here is the segmental analysis showing the right atrium. You see the right atrium is on the wrong side of the spine. Here the heart is on the wrong side of the spine. Look at that. We know where right and left is, and the heart is either in the middle or the wrong way. Here's an AV canal. We've seen that before. Type C AV canal, big atrial and ventricular components. There's pulmonary atresia with the left to right ductus shunt. This is the ductus shunting to a very small pulmonary artery. Here's the aortic arch. The blood flow is coming back into this pulmonary artery and supplying the pulmonary artery. And here's the Doppler velocity across there showing that it's not doing very well. Okay, I've seen that. We want to move on a little bit. Okay, so with patients with spongy myocardium and heart block, we had 10 fetus examined pathologically. All had a spongy myocardium and all had heart block. The majority had isomerism with AV canal and double outlet variation. So when you see spongy myocardium, check. Here's an example of a spongy myocardium. You see the compact layer is very much smaller than this layer. It's somewhat controversial, this whole issue, but here is a Carnegie stage 18. 18 stages of Carnegie, 2 18s are 36 and half of 18 is 9, 45-day-old human fetus, and here you can see the AV canals have fused at this stage, but you can see that this myocardium is still not compacted yet. So we call this spongy myocardium, okay? Here I've shown you this before, the azygous vein. I showed it to you before, I won't belie that. And here's heart block. Look, here's 1 second, right? the heart is beating slower than 1 second apart. So, and you look at the atrium is beating much faster than the ventricle. In fact, it's nearly complete heart block with this is cannon waves, okay? And I showed you this one before, so we don't have to look at it again. But I want to show you this here because there is isomerism of the atrial appendages. I think I showed this in the last thing. So this clearly is left isomerism, eh? And here, let's just go on to the next one. Okay, so we've done all that. We don't need to do it again. They have high drops because they have problems, especially if they have heart block, because they can't increase their heart rates. So to any stress they get normal, there's high drops. Here's the obstructions that occur along those lines. There's the obstruction to the aorta. Here's the retrograde flow with the spongy myocardium. So in summary, the association is pretty typical, and we've expanded upon that. Okay. Let's just look at the X-ray. You're after birth and you see a lesser fissure here, and you see a lesser fissure there. I hope you can see them. I can see them. You see that there's gas bowel, but you can't find the stomach. And when you put a catheter in the vein, it goes up to the wrong side of the heart and then crosses over. And here's the spine, and there you see the juxtaposition of the aorta and the IVC on the same side of the spine. Here, I don't know whether I showed you this before, there's two terminal crests. Here's a terminal crest, here's a terminal crest, and you can see this in the fetus. This is after birth, you see. Look, two right pulmonary arteries here, an AV canal. It must be right isomerism, double right-sidedness. Here's just a postnatal delivery showing the SVCs bilaterally here, and on either side of the SVC there and there, you see a terminal crest. This is a fetus, and you can see on this fetus broad-based rather than narrow-based atrial appendages. And this is a patient with isomerism. The heart is going the wrong way. There's an abnormality of the AV valve with an absent connection. And the pulmonary veins are draining to the wrong side of the heart. Okay? I don't know why we've got that there. So we talked about that absence of the connection. There's the ductus. I think I showed you this in the last one, so I don't think we need to belabor that again. But the pulmonary artery is very small and filling from an arterial duct over here. There's the complete AV canal, where the canal is not is unbalanced here. There's very little that is coming from the right side. There's the descending aorta. So big AV canal defect, and that's got an aorta and a pulmonary artery coming from the right ventricle, so double outlet right ventricle. So these are very complex diseases. Here's an example of transposition with pulmonary stenosis. Look, the size of the pulmonary artery is much smaller than the aorta, and you can see this acceleration which is occurring because the blood is forced at a higher velocity into the pulmonary artery than it is to the aorta. Now there's veins going below the diaphragm. Here's the descending aorta pulsating, and then just in front of this you see this collection of blood flow going down to the atrium, indicating a right isomerism with interruption of the with the veins below the diaphragm. So the bottom line, in right isomerism, those number of cases that I've mentioned that don't have an AV canal, pulmonary atresia, anomalous veins, deep transposition, and atrioventricular can be counted on the fingers of a mutilated hand. Okay, now not all is lost here, because in the future, I don't know whether you have this, but this is the basis of what they call STIC technology, spatio-temporal image correlation. It's based on three-dimensional imaging, and they can take a chamber and highlight the chamber, and it describes a color to that chamber. And then it does a three-dimensional area of the chamber and surface area. So it doesn't matter what the colors are, but if you look over here, this is broad-based appendages. Okay, this is right isomerism. And here are two narrow-based appendages, and this is left isomerism. So I think that we can do that on the basis of the stick correlation, and we have done that too. So here's this patient of ours, and I think I'll just show you an example of the left isomerism. You see that once again, right isomerism, you see the right atrial appendages bilaterally, broad-based appendages, and here is the aorta with the ductus filling the pulmonary artery. This will stop in a minute. There's the ductus here, see? Okay. And there's the pulmonary veins draining to the wrong atrium. They're draining to the right atrium. Left pulmonary veins, right pulmonary veins draining to this atrium, and they should drain to that atrium. And after birth, that's exactly what we found. The veins were draining to the wrong atrium. There was only one AV valve with AV valve insufficiency. And on X-ray, you see that there are bilateral ductuses. We missed one of the ductuses. We only saw this duct, where there were two ducts and absent central pulmonary arteries with total anomalous pulmonary venous return. And after birth, we actually did this, and you see here two right, this is CT, two right bronchi, okay? We see two ductuses, this one filling this pulmonary artery, this one filling that pulmonary artery. And the child got there's double ductuses again. The child got a bilateral shunts and eventually went for Fontan procedure. So this is a complicated disease. I think we've made a lot of strides in making the diagnosis in utero, and I thank you for your attention.